Good evening. I am Iowa Political Director Dave Price, joined by Connor Hendricks, our Capitol Bureau reporter, and welcome to the second floor of the Iowa State House, where Governor Kim Reynolds is getting set in a few minutes to deliver her 8th condition of the state address. And as we look right behind us, this is where the governor will be arriving. You can see 3 of the state's office holders waiting, and I believe, let's see an entourage coming behind us. These are some of the legislators. There's the governor in that fuchsia, as she has some legislators escorting her in. 6 o'clock is about when this speech is supposed to begin. Connor, as we look at the procession of the governor, the legislators, and some of her staff getting ready to go in, you spent some of your day today listening to the governor's speech from last year to see what she talked about and what actually became law. So give us a refresher.
Well, Dave, just about everything that made it into the speech made it into law last year. Governor Kim Reynolds had a variety of different proposals in her condition of the state address, such as, let's start with education, a teacher pay increase, also overhauling the state's area education agency system, which provides services to the state's special education students, as well as a cut to the sales, or not the sales tax, but rather the personal income tax, as well as a few other different things. So almost everything that made it into the speech, like I said, made it into law.
A little bit easier when your party, the Republican Party, controls both chambers. As we're discussing here, you can see the folks in the black robes as the Iowa Supreme Court justices, along with some of the other higher court judges from across the state, are lining up as they make their way inside the state capitol. And there were a few things that the governor talked about, maybe beyond the speech, that she was not able to get through. Some of this starts getting a little complicated, but some of it is a taxing strategy where you would tax commercial child care centers at residential rates, something that some of them think could bring them some valuable cost savings, and maybe then it could be a little more affordable for what they could offer in child care to Iowa families. Governor has talked a lot about child care. We will see if that makes it into the speech. Taxes, that's been a big part, as you talked about last year. The governor, since she became governor in 2017, has been part of, I think it's 5 different tax cuts. This latest one kicked in this year, this flat tax at 3.8%. And that is something Republicans have focused since they've had what they call the trifecta here, the governor's office and the 2 chambers of the Iowa legislature. And as you know, Connor, the governor has said that by the time this term is up, which would be the end of 2026, going in the beginning of 2027, she wants it at 0. Now, it sounds like from our conversations with House Speaker Pat Grassley, it's probably not this year that they're going to work more on that. They're going to kind of chill a little bit, see how revenues are doing after the tax cuts that are already starting to kick in. But that doesn't mean that there will not be discussions in this building, this legislative session, on taxes, and property taxes might be what they talk about.
Yeah, property taxes looks like it's really going to be the big push this session. We've heard from Republicans in the Senate and in the House that say that this is their number 1 priority, bar none. It just remains to be seen how exactly they're going to do it. You know, it might be a little different. It might be a little difficult, rather, to try and do certain things because they'll impact tax bases differently, whether you have a large city like Des Moines versus a really small town in Iowa. It all just depends on the population size when it comes to property tax. It'll be interesting to watch just how they make this and get this through.
And that is something when you talk to the lawmakers about, as Pat Grassley, the House Speaker, laid out, income taxes, that's a lot simpler. You look at what the rates are, and if you bring them down a certain amount, that means it's going to cut revenues by a certain amount. They try to make sure the math works. Property taxes, a lot funkier than that, a lot more complicated, because whatever they do here can impact all these local governments. Will they still have enough money coming in to provide those local services? So taxes been a big theme since Kim Reynolds entered office in 2017. When she gives the speech, they don't usually get too much into the budget, but that will also come out publicly tonight. Her budget pitch for the coming year, of course, it'll take the 2 legislative chambers to be a big part of that. But they know big picture, because of all the tax cuts that have kicked in, that has been reducing the amount of money coming into the state coffers. So they have to keep that in mind. and they're going to have to realize that they're going to have to spend less money. Got a few more folks lining up here. A lot of these are law enforcement members that have lined up as well. The governor about to hit the steps so she can make her entrance in there. You've been hearing a series of applause as the various dignitaries make their way into the Iowa House Rotunda. This is a familiar place for Governor Reynolds, as we mentioned. She became governor in 2017. She had been lieutenant governor. We remember back that year, Terry Branstad, the country's longest serving governor at the time, resigned his position to join the Trump administration to become the U.S. ambassador to China. Kim Reynolds ascended to the position, and now for this 8-year stretch, she has enjoyed Republican majorities in both the House and Senate, as she has now ascended to the top step and made her way into the Iowa House chambers. And as you probably figured this out, the folks from the Senate come over and join the House, so everybody sits there together. Seats are a premium.
That's right.
On a night like this. And we were downstairs earlier where they had this sign up, and there was a big, long line of people, primarily invited guests, to be able to get inside there. They sign up, get ready, and then tonight sit in one of these reserved seats.
Well, and on the House floor as well, because you have to, like you said, we're inviting the Senate over, so we have to sit two to a desk. And then also, as Dave mentioned, it was a madhouse down there on the ground floor with folks trying to sign in, all to get those seats up in the top gallery to watch this speech tonight. Should kick off here in just a few minutes.
And as she gets ready to walk up and deliver her remarks, we think about what she's talked about last year and some of the themes she's talked about. We know cell phones will be part of this because that is something that she has already foreshadowed that will be important. She wants to see some type of restrictions in the classroom so kids are not on their phones when they're supposed to be learning. So I think it's safe to bet that we can expect some of that conversation part of her remarks tonight as she lays out her vision for the year ahead. Here's the governor.
It's many more times in magnitude people who are gathered in the House chamber for this event, some of them sitting among the House members, others sitting in balconies. Now, let's go to the floor and hear from Governor Kim Reynolds.
It is my pleasure to introduce Governor Kim Reynolds for her Condition of the State message to the 2025 session of the 91st General Assembly.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Madam President, Mr. Speaker, Lieutenant Governor, First Gentleman, legislative leaders and members, justices and judges, my fellow Iowans. It's my honor and privilege to once again report on the condition of our great state from this chamber in our beautiful state capitol. We refer to this building as the People's House, and for good reason. This is the place where their government deals with their business. Everything that happens here begins and ends with them. And it's because of them, their energy and creativity, their resilience and goodness, that I can say, once again, the condition of our state is strong. So let's start with some national rankings. We're the #1 state for retirement and millennial home ownership, and the #1 state for fiscal responsibility for 3 years running. Second in cost of living, and third for opportunity. We're also #4 for health care and educational choice, and we've ranked the 6th best state overall, but always #1 in my mind. There really is so much to be proud of. We've reduced taxes, saving Iowans more than $24 billion over 10 years. No more tax on retirement income, no inheritance tax. And starting this month, Iowans get to keep even more of the money that they earn with a 3.8 flat tax, a far cry from 8.98% of 6 years ago. We've transformed the way our state interacts with citizens, businesses, and entrepreneurs, shrinking and aligning government so that our tax cuts are sustainable. We've consolidated agencies, eliminated 1,200 burdensome regulations, remade legacy systems, centralized programs, and leveraged technology. We took fragmented IT systems spread across 20 different agencies and consolidated them into one department. And for the first time ever, we have a single viewpoint into every IT operation within the executive branch. So last year, when the cybersecurity company CrowdStrike brought down IT systems across the world, Iowa's consolidated system was back online shortly after lunch, while other states and businesses were in the dark for days and even weeks. In just 18 months, our alignment and efficiency efforts have saved taxpayers $217 million, already surpassing our initial projection for the first 4 years. So it's not surprising that I like to say we were doing Doge before Doge was a thing. And to build on our success, I'm launching our own state Doge to find even greater savings and efficiencies in both state and local government. Because to pass meaningful property tax reform, we also need to be lean at the local level. I've asked Emily Schmidt, General Counsel of Sukup Manufacturing, to lead this effort. The trajectory of our state is not just impressive, but inspiring. In just a few short years, we've turned our state into a national model for bold, get-it-done government, and we're not stopping. Emily, thank you for chairing this. Even though Iowa is on the right path, 2024 had its fair share of challenges, and there are still Iowans struggling today. That's why we're back, to keep working, to give every Iowan the opportunity to succeed, to earn a paycheck, care for their family and themselves, to ensure that every Iowan maintains the rights endowed by our Creator: life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Of course, government is only a small piece of that. Every teacher, neighbor, coworker, friend, and every Iowan is called upon to encourage one another and build one another up. I witnessed so much of that this past year, and it was never more inspiring than when Iowans needed it most. We faced devastating tornadoes and historic flooding that left families, farms, businesses, schools, and communities reeling. To put it into perspective, Iowa was granted 3 presidential disaster declarations in just 2 months. I'll never forget the devastation and the heartbreak, but I also witnessed Iowans lifting each other up, volunteers clearing debris, residents comforting neighbors, and first responders and local officials working around the clock, many who had their own homes or businesses destroyed, yet they continued to put others first. In Spencer, brothers Aaron and Drew Hoeing left their home, drove 30 miles, and launched their boat into the submerged streets. They rescued dozens of people, many of whom had been stranded in their cars or on the roofs of their homes. In Rock Valley, Police Chief Warburton and his team, alongside an array of firefighters and other first responders, waded through chest-deep water and a dangerous current to carry children on their shoulders to safety. So many volunteers showed up from surrounding communities with their equipment that the residents affectionately referred to them as the Farmer Army. It's hard to imagine anything more Iowan. And I can tell you, that army shows up every time disaster strikes. We saw it in Greenfield after an EF4 tornado damaged numerous homes and claimed 4 precious lives. Just 2 months later, enough debris had been cleared that the city was able to host almost 20,000 RAGBRAI cyclists who donated more than $50,000 to help with recovery. Even younger Iowans got involved. 10-year-old Quinn Swart took it on herself to create bracelets and keychains, raising $8,000 for flood victims. As she put it, I heard what some of my friends were going through, and I wanted to find a way to make them smile. Quinn, we're all smiling now. We're joined tonight by some of the volunteers, state employees, emergency managers, first responders, and local leaders who stepped up in the face of adversity. You represent so many others across the state who demonstrated the strength, compassion, and determination that defines Iowa. Please join me in thanking these Iowans for their heroism and dedication. Thank you. I want to pause for a moment tonight to recognize 2 remarkable Iowans we lost last year who served our state with distinction. Former Secretary of Agriculture Bill Northey dedicated his life to farm families, rural communities, and the state he loved. He was a beloved husband, father, and grandpa. His loss deprives us not only of a servant leader like few others, but also a dear friend to so many. He is greatly missed. So too is former Congressman Jim Leach, who for 3 decades modeled how to combine elected office with civility, kindness, and grace. It's a timeless lesson, and we're grateful to have benefited from his example. Please join me in a moment of silence to remember these humble individuals. If you're like me, every legislative session begins with a strong sense of anticipation After all, our positions of public trust mean we have the opportunity to make a difference in the lives of Iowans. And that starts with making sure every child has access to a quality education. Today, Iowa families have more options than ever before to choose a learning environment that best fits their child's needs. For 92% of families, that means enrolling their children in the public school where they live. And that's no surprise. We have great public schools and teachers, and we want to keep it that way. That's why we've invested more than $3.8 billion in our public schools last year, about 43% of our state budget. It's also why we made historic investments in our teachers, including the largest pay raise in our state's history. For families who want another option, we made that possible for every Iowan, regardless of income. This year, nearly 28,000 students are using education savings accounts, making it the third largest program in the country. For so many of these families, this has brought genuine educational freedom. In addition to this, over 43,000 public school students, 9%, took advantage of open enrollment to attend a public school outside of their home district. Because what works for some families doesn't always fit within the lines that are drawn by government. And in the last 2 years, we've gone from 3 to 17 high-quality public charter schools, providing a variety of innovative, cost-free options that are focused on STEM, work-based learning, underserved children, and more. These schools and the stories coming out of them are inspiring. One student who enrolled in a construction program at Great Oaks Charter School in Des Moines said, quote, "It isn't just helping me finish school, it's helping me build my future." Next school year, just a few blocks from the Capitol, Des Moines Prep will emphasize hands-on learning and student empowerment for high schoolers. It's a great opportunity for kids to connect the worlds of school and work in a dynamic commercial hub. Then there's the story of Dikarian Harris, a student who felt frustrated until he enrolled in Empowering Excellence, a public charter school now in its first year in Cedar Rapids. Because of the help he's getting at his new school, he said, "I had the opportunity to rebuild confidence in education." Sarah Swayze is the school's founder, and she is a longtime civic leader and advocate, and Empowering Excellence is already expanding next year. It goes to show what's possible when a culture of innovation and work-based learning is allowed to take root and grow. Lives changed, futures brightened, hope regained. Both Sarah and Dikarian are here with us tonight. Please join me in recognizing them for what they've accomplished. Prioritizing students means setting the kind of high and rigorous expectations that bring out their very best. Take literacy. Last year, we passed important legislation that requires schools to create personalized plans for students who aren't reading proficiently at grade level. We also provided educators with no-cost training that's grounded in the science of reading. And we sent every first grader in the state a pack of literacy-enhancing books known as decodables to help parents reinforce reading skills at home. Now it's time to do the same with another foundational skill, math. Along with early childhood literacy, nothing is more predictive of future success both in the classroom and the workforce than the confidence that comes with math proficiency. I'm proposing a bill that will ensure children who are struggling in math are identified and receive the personalized help that they need. The bill will also strengthen math instruction by equipping our teachers with evidence-based professional development and providing high-quality teacher preparation training. It's time that we return to teaching math the way we know it works. I just might be able to help some of our grandkids again. It wasn't a reality before that. When you ask educators about the obstacles they're facing in the classroom, smartphone distraction is consistently near the top of the list. According to a survey by Pew Research, more than 7 in 10 high school teachers say it's a major problem. 80% of Gen Z report using their phone at least 6 hours per day. It's unhealthy, and the results are as predictable as they are unacceptable. Lost sleep, lower productivity, more distractions, and increased anxiety. Many districts have already begun to address the problem. Some, like Hoover High in Des Moines, have ruled out the use of cell phones during instructional time. Others, like the Ottumwa Community School District, require that kids put their phones away for the entire school day. And a good case can be made for either policy or something in between. And I truly applaud the administrators, teachers, and parents coming together to find the right balance for their communities. What's no longer acceptable is doing nothing. That's why I'm proposing legislation that requires schools keep instructional time free from digital distractions at a minimum. Of course, there'll be common sense exceptions, like during an emergency, but the evidence is in, and it's time to act. Let's make sure the classroom is a place for learning, growth, and connection. Let's pass this bill and give students their best possible chance at success. I want to address another important topic about cell phones that we need to finally resolve, and that's hands-free driving. Cell phones are a distraction in the classroom. They're deadly on the highway. With us tonight is a family who understands that nightmare all too well. 2 years ago, Roland Taylor was killed by a distracted driver. Of the 9 minutes the driver was in his car that evening, he spent 7 on his phone. I met Roland's wife, Gwen, and daughters, Angie and Lisa, last summer. They shared with me that they don't want another family to go through what they've been through. So they are strong advocates for hands-free driving. For the sake of all our loved ones on the road, let's finally pass legislation that requires drivers to keep their eyes on the road and away from their phones. Childcare has been a long-standing priority of my administration. Over the last 4 years, we've increased childcare capacity by almost 27,000 slots. And to make the most of this new capacity, a stable workforce is critical. That's why 2 years ago, we created a pilot that provides free childcare to childcare workers. It's been successful at decreasing the staff turnover rate. Now that we know it works, let's make this program permanent. A new pilot program called Community Solutions Funds is also making progress. Working with the Iowa Women's Foundation, the state contributed $3 million to facilitate the creation of 9 regional community solutions funds to raise child care wages without raising cost on families. These funds accept donations from businesses, philanthropists, and nonprofits, recruiting more Iowans to this profession. 4 years ago, Hamilton County's 4 child care centers were sitting at or below 65% capacity, with providers starting at $8.50 an hour. Today, after starting a community solutions fund, staff have received a 36% raise, and 3 of the 4 centers are at 100% capacity, with total enrollment increasing by more than 100 children countywide. There's no reason this success can't be replicated across the state. To help do so, I'm pleased to announce that we're launching a statewide solutions fund to which individuals or businesses can donate to enhance child care workforce wages and help take the regional funds to the next level. We're joined tonight by some of the officials who helped get Hamilton County's regional fund off the ground. Let's give them a hand for showing what's possible when community leaders come together to solve community problems. Community leaders have also come together to address another child care challenge, the difficulty in coordinating transportation between child care and preschool during the day. In some ways, it's a problem created by our own success. Iowa is ranked 5th in the country for 4-year-old preschool access, and our Shared Visions program is helping to extend hours and provide greater support for kids with risk factors. More than 2/3 of our 4-year-olds are enrolled in some form of preschool. That's almost double the rest of the country. But this can create problems for some working parents who struggle to shuttle their kids between preschool and childcare during the workday. Parents need a solution that meets the demands of their busy lives, one that allows their children to benefit from our successful preschool program and have access to childcare. It's about more than convenience. It's about offering our children the educational foundation they need while giving parents peace of mind that their children are cared for throughout the workday. I'm proposing to establish a continuum of care program that will provide 3-year grants for preschool programs and child care providers that come together to integrate their services. The funds could be used to defray the cost of transportation to bring the children from school to childcare or vice versa. Or they could pay for a preschool teacher at a local child care center or child care staff at the local school. Under my proposal, the directors at Early Childhood Iowa will review and manage the grant awards. These advocates from across the state work passionately every day to make a difference in the lives of our young children and families, providing a critical connection between the state and local communities to help ensure that our kids thrive. I appreciate their unwavering commitment to our children, and I know they'll do a good job. So here's an example of what these grants could do. Center Point Urbana School District partners with a private child care center that operates right in the building. Parents can drop their children off as early as 6:30 in the morning. And when they're done with preschool, they walk back down the hall to the child care center, where they play until their parents arrive at 5:30. The child care director, Jennifer Litke, said she believes, quote, "The best solution for working families lies in a partnership between the public and private early childhood education communities. Partnerships like ours," she said, have the potential of benefiting both school districts and child care programs around the state. This allows for greater accessibility to preschool while eliminating the transportation burden on working families, and it does all of this while protecting an already unstable child care industry. Jennifer, along with Heidi McGonigal, who runs the preschool program, Superintendent John Elkin, and many of the local ECI directors are with us here tonight. Please recognize these individuals for their dedication. The well-being of working families in rural communities also depends on access to high-quality health care. While we have challenges, Iowa has a strong foundation to build on. We're ranked number one for lowest health care cost, with the fourth best health care system overall. We rank 9th for health care access, and when it comes to women's health, we rank 14th in the nation and have been named the 11th best state to have a baby. But we still need more medical professionals in every part of the state, including a greater variety of specialists. To accomplish this, I am proposing to consolidate our loan repayment programs and double our investment to $10 million while opening it to anyone who commits to practicing in rural Iowa for 5 years, even if they're trained elsewhere. We also know that doctors often decide to practice where they do their residency. We know, too, that Iowa doesn't have nearly enough residency slots, preventing many physicians from giving our state a chance. That's why I'm directing HHS to launch a program in partnership with Broadlawns and the University of Iowa to secure over $150 million in federal funds to create a projected 115 new residency slots each year at our 14 teaching hospitals. With a typical 3 to 4 year residency rotation, that would mean around 460 new physicians being trained right here in Iowa. That is a game changer for rural communities and our state. We also need more nurses, CNAs, and LPNs, and to facilitate that, I'm announcing $3 million in grants for employers to train and educate individuals in these areas. The program provides more flexibility for employers and will help fill in-demand health careers. We also need to review our Medicaid rate model to ensure that we're accounting for the unique needs of providers in different areas of our state. At my direction, HHS will be seeking federal approval to provide more Medicaid rate flexibility with the goal of incentivizing creative regional partnerships that can better support our healthcare providers and improve services. There are more immediate solutions that we can pursue to continue to support maternal care in Iowa. Today, Iowa reimburses hospitals and physicians at a single bundled rate, regardless of a pregnancy risk level. This rigid approach doesn't make sense for mothers or doctors, so I'm proposing legislation that would unbundle the rates and increase reimbursement to OBGYNs and primary care physicians for complex cases. We should also increase rates for certified nurse midwives and add doula services as a covered Medicaid benefit. These professionals also have an important role to play in supporting our mothers and children, and our rates should reflect that. An adverse health diagnosis can change everything in the blink of an eye. One moment you're playing with your kids or grandkids, planning family gatherings, and doing daily life. Then lightning strikes, and those everyday joys seem not just precious, but fragile. It puts things into perspective, and it reminds us of what matters most. Like so many others, this is a path that my own family has walked. More than a year ago, after Kevin received a lung cancer diagnosis, I'm happy to share that the cancer remains in remission and he continues to do well. Kevin? Well, you clap now, but can I still say some nice things about Kevin? Kevin, you're the rock of our family, a wonderful first gentleman, and the girls and I thank God every single day for you. There's another leader in this chamber who has absorbed the shock of a cancer diagnosis. Senator Majority Leader Whitfer has been fighting a private battle while continuing to serve his state. Jack, your colleagues, friends, and constituents are inspired by your quiet fortitude despite the grueling pressure of treatment. We're pulling and praying for you, Rachel, and the kids every step of the way. Thank you for your powerful example of service, leadership, and grace. Every case of cancer is a tragedy, and I'm concerned by the data showing that these tragedies disproportionately affect Iowans. Our state has ranked second for new cancer cases 2 years running, and we're one of just 2 states with rising rates. That's the what of this problem. The why and the how are where things get tricky. According to the Iowa Cancer Registry, we're in the top 5 states for binge drinking. We're also among the top for alcohol-related cancers, with the highest incidence in the Midwest. This month, the Surgeon General warned that alcohol is known as a carcinogen. Again, none of this is conclusive. There's a lot we still don't know, and multiple factors are likely at play. We shouldn't jump to conclusions, but we need to get to the bottom of this. Tonight, I'm announcing a new partnership between Iowa HHS and the University of Iowa to establish a dedicated team of epidemiologists to research the behavioral, genetic, and environmental factors that might be playing a role. And I'm asking the legislature to appropriate $1 million to get their work started. Iowans don't need more speculation. They need answers. Kevin and I both grew up in rural Iowa and lived there for most of our lives. It's where I learned not just the value of a dollar, but also the work that earns it. Whether on the farm or in the factory, my dad and grandpa viewed their work as an opportunity and a privilege. Kevin and I have tried to carry that example and pass it on to our children. I know so many of you do the same. In our biggest cities and smallest towns, we Iowans are raised to appreciate hard work and the sense of purpose it provides. That's why it's always been a priority of mine to make sure that our government programs reflect a culture of work. From promoting training programs to turning our unemployment system into a reemployment system, we've succeeded in making sure that more Iowans wake up in the morning with a sense of purpose. Some of these efforts have been hampered by a federal government that often pays people to stay home. But starting next week, we'll have a president who understands the importance of work. So I'm proposing that Iowa apply for a federal waiver to institute work requirements for able-bodied adults on Medicaid. In other words, if you can work, you should. For the men and women who are receiving these government payments, getting back to work can be a lifeline to stability and self-sufficiency. I also want to build on the success of our unemployment reforms. When Iowans lose their jobs, the Department of Workforce Development doesn't just hand out money. They help them get back to work. Because of that, Iowans are finding new jobs on average in just 9 weeks. Nationally, I want you to know that number is closer to 23 weeks. This is what success looks like. As a result, our unemployment trust fund is full. In fact, we have more than we need. Our nearly $2 billion trust fund is the 9th highest in the country, even though we're 32nd for population. Clearly, we're over-collecting. To make it worse, we apply our unemployment tax to more wages than any other state in our region. Iowa taxes up to $38,000 in wages. Illinois only taxes $13,000. South Dakota is at $15,000, and Wisconsin is at $14,000. Only Minnesota taxes business more. We need to stop punishing our employers by requiring them to pay more tax than necessary. Instead, employers should keep and reinvest this money into their businesses, their workers, and their communities. That's why I'm again proposing that we reduce the unemployment insurance payments that employers make by half. This will result in nearly $1 billion in savings, which will flow through businesses of all sizes to communities across our state. Let's not wait another year. It's time to get this done. Iowa has always benefited from looking forward to anticipating future needs and getting ahead of the curve. Energy is a clear example. Over the last 2 decades, we've made changes that turned Iowa into an energy leader. The results speak for themselves. We're a leader in renewable energy and biofuels. We rank in the top 10 for grid reliability, and we've done all this while maintaining some of the lowest electricity prices in the country. That's a plus for Iowans and a big recruitment tool for economic development. But as the world becomes more dependent on technology and as AI becomes more prevalent, energy demand is dramatically increasing. So we need to look forward again and to make sure that our grid remains resilient and our prices low. For starters, we need to take a serious look at nuclear energy. Its potential is amazing, but the investment is big and the horizon is long. So we need to get started. In the coming months, I'll be putting together a task force that will make recommendations for how we can move forward. I'll be bringing together experts to look at issues like permitting, which often takes too long. They'll also look at workforce challenges because recruiting nuclear engineers doesn't happen overnight. And they'll be talking with stakeholders around the state to make sure that we have local buy-in. I'll also be proposing a bill and working with legislators to continue to promote an all-of-the-above energy portfolio that ensures the lights are on regardless of whether it's hot, cold, windy, or cloudy. We want to send a message to businesses. Invest in Iowa and you won't regret it. You'll have the workforce, the energy infrastructure, and the low cost of doing business to compete with any company in the world. When I say invest in Iowa, I'm talking about every corner of our state. But I know that there are some communities that face structural barriers. Maybe they don't have a water treatment plant that can handle a large manufacturing facility. Or maybe their natural gas infrastructure isn't big enough to handle a new factory. I want to give all communities, especially rural areas, the chance to compete on a national stage. The federal government provides Iowa a certain amount of tax-exempt bonds every year. I'm working to ensure that going forward, communities can use this low-cost financing for energy and water infrastructure projects. In addition, I'm proposing to modernize our state's energy infrastructure revolving loan program. I've talked to local leaders who have lost out on private investment because of infrastructure concerns. So let's work together this session to solve this barrier to growth and drive prosperity in every part of our state. Of course, we're always focused on expanding Iowa's economy. That's why I led a trade mission to India, the world's largest democracy and a place that holds great potential for Iowa farmers. But not all trade missions require long-distance travel. This spring, I'm headed to a place closer but much different than here. A place where taxes are high, the education system is failing, where crime is off the charts, business regulation is crushing, and their government is running a $3.2 billion deficit. I'm heading to Illinois. I'll be meeting with business leaders to sell them on why they should move their operations across the Mississippi. It's a lot of what I've talked about tonight. Their electricity rates are more than 20% higher than ours. Their labor participation rate is lower, their taxes higher, and their commutes longer. We're number 3 for opportunity, they're 40. We get an A for fiscal responsibility, they got an F. We're neighbors, but our approach to governing couldn't be more stark. My point isn't to rag on Illinois, well, maybe a little. It's to say that I am so excited and proud to tell our story, the Iowa story, wherever I go, to share that we're a state of low taxes and cost of living, of high character and value, a state where a farmer army might just show up to your house, and that's a good thing. Iowa is a state that provides a quality education for every child and the freedom to raise your child with the values that your parents instilled in you. A state with endless opportunity and timeless charm. I'm excited to tell this story in Chicago, Minneapolis, New York, or any city, big or small, around the country and around the world, because it truly is a great story, and it's one only Iowans could write. I am so proud to call this state home, and I am so honored to be your governor. Thank you, God bless you, and God bless the great state of Iowa. God bless you.
Iowa Governor Kim Reynolds delivering her 8th condition of the state here at the Iowa State House on the 2nd floor on the Iowa House Chamber. Bring back Connor Hendricks. I'm Iowa Political Director Dave Price. Connor, as the governor had talked about in recent weeks, we knew she was going to talk about cell phones. We will see if this ends up being one of the more popular things that passes through the legislature this session. Now, this is an example of the state getting ready to pass something that would take away some local control in a sense. It would at least establish some minimums that public school districts have to have. So essentially, no cell phones for kids while the teacher is teaching. That's the bottom line, while the districts can go further if they choose to.
Well, and Dave, some districts do this a little bit differently. Like I've been to Hoover High School here in Des Moines. They don't let their students have cell phones in class. They can't have them on them. They have to be away in a book bag, but they can still use them in the hallway, during transitions, and at the cafeteria. Some don't let students use their cell phones at all day.
Correct. And that is something that we have seen similar discussions taking place in other states across the country. And we'll acknowledge, of course, that there are very strong Republican majorities in both chambers. But this would be something you would expect to see some bipartisan support as we step aside to watch the governor hugging some of the legislators as she makes her way out with her husband, who she talked about during her condition of the state, Kevin Reynolds, who has been battling cancer and by all accounts has been doing well in his treatment. And the governor gave him a shout out and a thank you for that. Let's bring in Iowa House Minority Leader Jennifer Conforst, who sat in there for the governor's speech. Let's do first reactions. What'd you think?
First reactions was there's some stuff that I can like in there and some stuff that I don't like. But the biggest thing is, if everyday Iowans are listening to this, how's their budget going to be better by the end of this legislative session? I didn't hear a lot of proposals that will actually fix something pretty quick.
All right,
that's what Iowans want to know.
Excuse me.
My apologies.
I presume cell phones, that might be something your caucus jumps on?
Sure.
In support?
We can support cell phone restrictions in classrooms as long as teachers aren't policing one more thing, as long as school districts have the option to do it the way that works best for them. No one wants distracted students in classrooms. We can all agree with that. I think that, it's an interesting thing to focus on. Let's do it and move on because we've got a lot of problems we got to fix.
Your caucus, especially maybe on the Senate side, last session, and I think some of your members did as well, talked about the need for increased focus on why our state's cancer rates are as high as they are. Second highest in the country, I believe, 2 straight years. What did you make about her talk committing or asking for $1 million from the legislature?
I'm thrilled about that. Representative Austin Baith, as a physician, has been working hard on addressing this issue. I'm thrilled to see that we're going to seek more information. We need to move quickly. There are people who are being diagnosed right now. Let's make sure that while we're gathering information, we're also looking to see how we can prevent future diagnoses just like that.
Senator Weiner from the Iowa City area had talked about this last year, but wanted more money committed to this. Bottom line, is $1 million enough to start this?
Look, it's better than nothing, but this is a serious problem. We're second in the country. We need to make sure we're taking this seriously and quickly. Again, we have to get data quickly and start moving. We've ignored this problem for too long. The governor has ignored this problem for too long. It's time to act. So $1 million is a nice start, but we really need to get to work.
Let's go back to your earlier point about bottom line, will Iowans be better off financially? She talked about child care. Now, it seems to be, from what we understand, more focused on the providers there could be, as long as businesses contribute to this fund, perhaps child care workers could get additional pay raises. There's no immediate relief for child care families, at least the way I understand it.
Right. I think that's the biggest problem, right? Accessibility isn't always the problem. Affordability is the problem. We've been talking about childcare for years. Families are still paying more than their mortgage every month on childcare. So we can continue to talk about accessibility, but what are we doing to make that bill a little less? And so, I think that more slots is fine, but it's not translating into lower rates. And so we have to address that issue because families are writing that check right now for February, and that check has only gotten bigger. So how are we as a legislature working to actually fix that problem? Big ideas are fine, but their bill's still the same. So something's not working. Let's do something different.
So what else did you want to hear in there when it comes especially to families affording their bills?
Yeah, look, I think that we need to be listening to what those middle class families are telling us, right? So tax cuts for corporations, that was an interesting, thing to talk about. But what about tax cuts for middle class families? Last time, 500,000 families got no tax cut during the last plan. So we're listening to those middle class families who are sitting down at the kitchen table right now to do their budget. How will we as a legislature make life better by July 1st when these new laws go into effect? These are all big ideas that are going to take a while. Families need help right now. And so I didn't hear a lot of things that are going to actually address the concerns that families are facing as they sit down at that kitchen table.
All right, I'm really going to put you on the spot, but there's one topic that I don't have a good handle on yet, and that's what's going to happen with energy. Do you have a feel for that? We are we're a regulated industry, unlike some other states when it comes to energy. With could you glean enough from what she was talking about? Will this be additional energy providers? What does it mean?
Yeah, we want to welcome the governor to the cause of trying to figure out where affordable energy can be possible. We've been working on this for a while. Glad to hear that she recognizes that it's a concern. As she mentioned, a long runway for nuclear. We're fine to have that conversation. But again, we can do things right now to lower energy costs. Why aren't we doing them? And so when I hear about energy policy, again, I'm hearing big picture ideas. Those are great. But we got families right now who are writing that check to their energy company that's bigger than it was. And as she mentions, AI, other, high taxing energy things are happening more and more in our state. We got to act now. So a long runway is a great theory, but we got bills to pay, and that's our biggest concern.
Thank you. Appreciate the time.
Happy to be here as always.
Great. So we've kind of ticked through some of the highlights here. It looks like there will be at least some initial discussions on energy. Expect conversations about childcare. There could be various ways they look at that. One thing, Connor, that she is apparently going to leave to the legislature to figure out would be this property tax reform. She was not really pitching any of that.
Right, Dave, and it really remains to be seen just exactly how they're going to do that. So far, we have kind of heard some proposals floating around that are a little bit different between the House and the Senate. This isn't a very easy topic, of course, to try and legislate, not like income taxes where it's very quick brackets. And communities of different sizes have different size tax bases, so the needs in Des Moines and how much they can afford to have the property taxes cut, it's a little bit different than Ottumwa and, say, maybe Chiron.
She also hit on one of the buzzwords, if you're following national politics, the DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency. That's what Tesla's owner, and X now, Elon Musk, is in charge of with former presidential candidate Vivek Ramaswamy. And as the governor has said, and she's used this joke before, that she has done DOGE before DOGE was cool, but she has appointed somebody, Emily Schmidt from Sukup Manufacturing, to oversee this new entity as they try to push for more cost savings, and that might be something they have to do more of. They've done a bunch of tax cuts that's reduced the amount of money coming into the state, so they will have to continue to look for efficiencies as they move forward.
And this just kind of follows what we've seen from the past few years out of Governor Reynolds, whether that be combining different boards and commissions, trying to strip back some regulations, different things like that. Governor Kim Reynolds likes to point out that she tries to make government as small as possible and try and cut things as where she can. So it'll be interesting to see what this DOGE committee, if you will, finds out and what their recommendations are.
And this realignment that they've done in reorganizing government, they're still working their way through that, so much still to find out about that. And big picture, there's a lot we still have to find out about the speech. The budget comes out as well, and as they work their way through the state legislature and this state legislative session that just began yesterday, that's when you get into the nitty-gritty of all of this and the real negotiations begin. Just because the governor is a Republican and there are a lot of Republicans both in the House and the Senate does not mean she's going to get everything she wants. Doesn't mean that her ideas will be exactly the way these things look. But this does kick off the more serious discussions and lays out the themes of a lot of the things we can expect that we will be watching in person over the next 3 months or so. For Connor Hendricks, I'm Dave Price, live at the Iowa State House where Governor Kim Reynolds has concluded her 8th Condition of the State address.